Welcome to the Internet of Things equation, a podcast when I talk about the Internet of Things domain both from the technical and business perspectives. I'm Łukasz Malinowski, the Internet of Things advisor and trainer. My today's guest is a bit mystery to me. He founded the Bitgear company in 2007. Bitgear quickly became a rising star on a number of rankings. Yet his LinkedIn page is all about his company. So I decided to invite him to the podcast to know more about him, his journey, and his enterprise. Hello, thank you so much for accepting my invitation and meeting with you today.
Hi, thanks for inviting me, and I'm looking forward to enlighten the mystery.
I do my best to invite people with real hands-on experience of the IoT domain to share their knowledge and hopefully help others starting the IoT journey to make good decisions along the way. If you could give us some history lesson on your IoT journey, how has it started and what's your hopes for the future?
So Bitgear is established in 2007, so it's 17 years now. They're sort of veterans. My personal background is in digital telecommunications. I worked in a small company from San Diego up to 2005, and then I worked a little bit as a freelancer, connected with the physical layer of digital telecommunications. Then we started Bitgear in 2007. We first started as a services company doing modems at the beginning, and then we evolved into doing electronics design as well. But somewhere around 2010, we started to think how we can innovate and how we can be innovative in our work to sell our knowledge in a different way. We started to create some innovation up to one stage, and then we find a customer partner, and then we create product out of these ideas, out of this initial demonstrators. We started with black boxes for cars, which crashes, they recover as well, like the way how you drive as a basis of some kind of service which would which would give insurance companies access to individuals, like how they drive, so they can tailor their offer still on an individual basis, not through some kind of proxies. That's how we started. We created a small prototype of black box. We tested it a little bit, and then we partnered with a company who hired us to develop product out of it. So it was a very interesting model because we could innovate as well, be a part of product development, but really doing the services, not risking through exposure of having your own product. And that's how we moved on to different market, to different verticals. This with vehicles and insurance telematics was a little bit too early. That company that we worked with for a while, it failed because now you have this trends that insurance companies now are getting into stage to digitalize, to disrupt their business. Then we moved with the similar concepts. We moved to mobile telecare, created a prototype of device which actually cares about elderly people if they stay at home alone or in similar situations, and also found a company which would partner with us to create a product and a digital system, digital service out of it. It was also a little bit too early because whose interest is to have a service like that. But now, as well, like with the evolution of IoT, with the broader understanding of digital transformation of businesses, now that makes a lot of sense. Then we specialize basically in the creation of products, electronic products and systems. We developed our own in-house product development methodology. We had numerous product development service engagement, service projects. And somewhere around 2018, we decided to have our own products. We were mature enough to have our own products, started to transform ourselves. When you say like a product company, it doesn't have to be maybe a company who has its own product, but also the company who has the capability to create and deploy certified mass produced products as well. That's how I see it. And our mindset is that we are a product company for a while, no matter that we are doing a product development for other companies, but our mindset is how we think is product oriented. We started in 2018 to create our own stuff, and that's how we entered into business to business IoT as a concept, which was back then in 2018, 17, 18. It was like in a Gartner curve. It was somewhere in the like highest high expectations. We are now in, again, there was a really disappointment in IoT. Meanwhile, now we are again in the rising part of the curve because now IoT really becomes realistic and mainstream. Getting back to our products are intended for like niche markets, access monitoring for exposed infrastructure. So, for example, we have a product like this. This is a sensor that we produce. We also have a sensor which is a small snapshot camera, which is meant to digitalize waste management as such, because you put on field a lot of small snapshot cameras, and then based on AI processing, you can extract not only how full the containers are, but also is there contamination in the process of recycling. Also, we have the other line of products. It's meant for precision agriculture. So this is Plantometer, our product. It's a spectral analysis device meant to assess the health of plants before it becomes visible that they are ill. So based on these couple of examples, you can see that it brings us to many different verticals, and that there is this importance of cross-domain knowledge. Not only know how to create devices, but we tend to know what is their value and what is their purpose in different verticals that we are active in. Today we are really like a product company. We do services as well, but everything is oriented around products, modifications of existing products, pushing envelope of knowledge a little bit, and improving products.
That's a very interesting story, and I would like to dive deep into a few facts that you mentioned. And one is extremely important for everyone thinking about IoT business is what you mentioned, that sometimes you are too early to the market and you can provide great solution, but you will fail, or at least you will have very hard time to getting adoption because you're too early. Could you share some hints about how to avoid that, or if you are in that situation, maybe how to navigate to survive that initial phase of educating the customers and the market?
If you recognize the driving style, and then you feel that that can be translated into variable rate for better drivers should pay less insurance, it's not that simple. So it looks like something that will change the world, but maybe world does not want to be changed. That is very typical for advanced ideas, especially disruptive ideas, which tend to change something which was done in a specific way for a while. So there are some industries like insurance, like physical and technical security. They are traditional, and the problem is that you see potential, but proving the value, especially somehow on the innovators. They would like to do the same way like they are doing at the moment, but they feel that there is a need for digital transformation. Everybody speaks about that, but okay, small innovators, small companies show us the value, and that's the biggest problem, because the energy of change is not always present.
Proving the value is a huge point, and I want to underline that for the listeners that IoT is not about technology at all. It's about providing business value and value to the end users, and technology is happened to be one of many variables that are into the whole equation. So that's a great
Yes,
point.
the technology is assumed to work, and because the technological complexity obsess providers in the way that they think that it is the most important. Unfortunately, it is not. The most important is the value it brings, and the understanding of that is not even the end users who would benefit from digitalization. They do not understand what technology can do, how to map that to their problems, because they do not know what can be done, and people from technology, they do not know what are the real needs and what are the real business effects. So dialogue and conversation between end users and technology providers, that's something which is mandatory for digital transformation. So that's the essence, and that's how IoT should be done. You have to converge to solution and not get bankrupt in the meanwhile. So that was your question as well. It is difficult, but I think that gap is closing. So very soon, end users and providers will do in parallel and support each other. It will not be somebody's role to prove something and somebody's role to buy something, but they will work together. That's my feeling.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, and this is my perspective as well, that my customers are experts in their respective domains. And they don't have to know anything about IT, cybersecurity. That is just another domain, and it happens that I can help them in those areas. But they are the experts, they know what they want to have, and they know what the success looks like if we've done the technology right. You mentioned the digital transformation and briefly talked about a few aspects of it. But on your website, you've got the statement that you provide soft start to the digital transformation. That got my attention because digital transformation, that's a huge change how the enterprise is organized, how it operates, and technology is just one piece of it. So how can you soft start a business?
Yeah. With something to show already, to put it that way. In-house, we have something which we call Innovation Lab. Today, you have platforms, so you can easily connect a system which gives some perspective what the value should be. So start would be like that you show up already with knowing a little bit about what are the domain problems of your end users and start from a system which would illustrate some benefits to end user, because it is not really like that you get specification from end users what they would like to do in the process of digital transformation, because it does not work that way. So it has to be certain iteration has to be done until the system which really works, which really brings value, is set up and proven in the operational environment. In that context, it's a soft start that we work with client. Does not have to be like that we start today, but let's work a little bit and let's converge to a solution, because our feeling is that there is no other way. There is no out of the box solution anyway.
Digital transformation is all about learning. The company is learning about how they operate and how they can evolve, and you are learning about their specific domain. You mentioned a few things that I want to really dive deep. That you want to show the value from the very beginning, and that's why I try not to use the POC, the proof of concept approach. I always used POV, proof of value, and I believe this is what you just said, that you've got the lab, and in that lab you can simulate the end state, of course without full functionality, but to give something for your customer to touch and to play with and to understand the potential, because there is way easier to define the business requirements. If someone doesn't know the potential of IoT, how can they define business requirements in the first place?
Yes, and you start to understand, and you start not really to be an expert, but for example, I know a lot about precision agriculture. I know who is buying who is buying, how the technology is bought, what is the innovation, how is innovation perceived, so at least. Then physical, technical security. It's also like a man-based business. They think how many people we will put on that project. You don't have to put that much people. You can put a little bit of sensors and a little bit of people as well, and do job more efficiently with the sensors, and also offer something which you were not able to offer before sensors. And that's a little bit of disruption as well. It is interesting because you are not, after some stage, you are not focused on technology because it is assumed that it works in the background. You are focused on bringing value. So you have to understand also the verticals where you tend to that you want to bring value at.
As you mentioned with that Gartner cycle, the hype about IoT is over, and now everyone expects it just to work in the background, and they don't want to really do anything with it. They just want to have the outcomes. Going back to your story, which is very interesting from my perspective, you said that you started as the service company and then slowly transitioned into the product domain. From your perspective, is it easier to start with services than with products, and what are challenges related to the product domain that might be very hard to predict?
It's in both cases it's easy to start, but it is not easy to sustain. So these are completely two different mindsets. So if you are doing services, then you have one economical mindset, one set of drivers which drives your business, and if you are in products, it's completely different. IoT is very interesting because that process of education of end users, that also the like opportunistic nature of business and so on. So it gives you a chance that you can actually spot on the fly where your product can. So you don't have to make a huge plans like this is how the product will look like. You start with something, and then opportunity arise and chance arise, so you can adapt the product. But the process has to be incremental. You have for typical stuff when you have products, you have these failures. We cannot afford a huge failure. It's all the time small failures. For example, we in order to illustrate the possibilities with a logistic chain. We develop a small weight scale which is LoRaWAN based. It works. We have a dashboard, and we start to animate end users to use that to define some sort of digital service which would be based on these scales. But it doesn't happen. It simply doesn't happen. Energy is lost. Okay, that's a small failure. 2 years from now, there will be opportunity. We will continue with that when there is opportunity. The point is that you have to have some basis and then incrementally develop products with a small modification adjustments. And when the opportunity arises, which is perfect, then you already have a product for that. So it's not typical like normal product companies. Now you have imagination like I would like to build something, new loudspeakers or whatever, and then you build them and nobody is buying or everybody is buying. It's not like that. It's more iterative process of creating products little by little, educating end users, and then finding a perfect stuff which could be scaled.
Let me summarize that for the audience. You provided tons of value. First of all, when you innovate, you are bound to fail. Because if you are not failing, then that means you are not innovating. That's as simple as that. And in order to survive those failures, you need to do it little by little. So you need to iterate very, very fast. In case of something goes wrong, you can easily start over again without losing tons of money and tons of time and customers in the process. So this is extremely important for everyone, both in the service space, product space. If you innovate, you will fail. So speaking about failures, could you share the biggest failure from the IoT domain and what you learned from that and how you transformed that failure into foundations of your success?
Well, as I mentioned, we have all these small failures, so it's not a one spectacular. When we speak about our investments, but we were witnessing others' big failures, and it is because it was in these cases it is only because it was too early for that technology, but that is how it is. And in our case, we have some sort of platform electronics with a small modification. We create completely new device, but basically the electronics which is underneath and also communication methods, the basis is of the platform. We have a roadmap and we are trying to follow the roadmap and modify it as soon as some kind of new opportunities arise. Currently, we are planning to be much more active in waste management because we have this device which takes snapshot from trash cans, so you can know what are the fill levels, is there contamination or recycling and so on. But if that does not work, the same technology can work in physical technical security. Maybe the killer app is some sort of protection systems. At this point, nobody knows. It's opportunistic. But you need to be like a more or less there. And then when the opportunity arises with a little bit of investment, with a little bit of energy, you have to be able to steer to the direction. Then for us, it is easier because we are in essence we do electronics and we do all that stuff like the design stuff embedded and so on, so we can quickly change the course. We also now produce device. A part of that process is in-house and part of that process is in the suppliers ecosystem that we have, and that makes the possibility that we, for example, if you need a new device, it's not like 2 years or something. Very quickly you can get a new device which is a modification of current device, mechanical modification, recertified and put on market. That's how we think the IoT should be approached when it
That's
comes to
very
devices. When it comes to devices.
When it comes to devices, and actually when it comes to platforms as well, let me provide my perspective. Once you've got a solid foundation, a solid framework in place, as you said, you've got the underlying electronics, communication, this is already figured out. You can build number of different business applications on top of the same framework with very small modifications. And this is very, very good design. I totally support that because that gives you the flexibility and that opens new opportunities for you that you can enter very quickly because you do not do the development from scratch. You already got strong
Yes.
foundations.
So failures are more in domain of these small customization modifications than in complete wrong direction.
Let's take a few steps back to see the big picture. We've got the concept, then we've got the prototype, and finally we've got the mass production. Could you lead us through all of that journey? Going from the prototype to the production is a huge challenge, but going from the initial concept to the prototype is yet another challenge. How you handle that since you provide the end-to-end solution for your
Yes.
customers?
The development of especially IoT devices, it has to be incremental. And what we apply is like we have make, test, validate cycles. For example, we have some initial assumptions. We make a small prototype just to try and to see how the specification can look like. Make, we test, we validate. Okay, now these are the specifications. Now we have next step is to have engineering prototype and also make, test, validate. Each time is a meaningful validation. Assumptions are transferred into something which is a stepping stone for the next step. You incrementally develop devices, incrementally, but in parallel, you actually test how these devices used by end users. So it's more design thinking stuff. You adjust your complete development method that end users are involved from the very early stages. At the end of the day, you make a product which is fit to purpose. It is not like in traditional way that you have this waterfall diagram of product development and then you get a first sample after 8 months and somebody tries and they say like, no, it's not it's not good. It has to be incremental. It has to be what we prefer is make, test, validate. What are the difficulties from prototype to mass production? You have to know how the devices are mass produced. And it's very interesting in this space. A lot of device producers they come from production space. They first were in production industry, and then they wanted to add value by having design team which would create devices and then use the resources of production. That's the main motivation. They come from design and product development, and then we added production capability. And think a little bit differently than companies who are producers at the first place. We create devices basically who can be produced massively, but in IoT these volumes are still not millions, so they are still niche products. So in order to step from prototype to mass produced device, you have to go once through that process of producing such device, and then you field device and then you see it doesn't work, then you have to recall and then you have to field again. Then you see that, for example, with LoRaWAN you cannot update firmware easily. For example, the updating firmware is that you have to go and physically grab the device and put it back into the in the office. After a while, you develop a process of creation of device, of production of device, of certifying of device, which is on the level that you actually can tell that you are a producer of devices. So that's the process. Usually, companies are capable only of creating prototypes, and they say, okay, now you produce, but that's not how it is. That's not the way to succeed, because production is a very, very important and very major part of the journey.
Exactly. The end customers, they expect the end-to-end support. So if they trust you from the concept to prototype, they expect you also deliver the production because the end product needs to meet the quality that they expect.
Yes, that's from the aspects of devices alone. The same expectations are only on the level of solution as well. A lot of our solutions are based on our devices. And if I may say that the most underestimated stuff with IoT is how to conceptualize the support of the system. If you are a solution integrator, you have to understand the IoT lifecycle. So many IT solutions integrator, like a traditional integrators, they do not understand that. They think that the internet always work, that when you install something, it will die after a couple of years. And it's not with the IoT. IoT has the life cycle which is much more difficult, and many fail basically to predict and to understand what is going on. People ask like how long batteries will hold. Okay, 10 years, but will device itself be there in 10 years, or it will be just dust? That's also a question like of support, of maintenance. And my feeling is that this prediction of how IoT will cost down the road, like in the next 10 years, and how it's difficult to support, that's something which is make or break for this successful IoT implementation.
That's crucial what you said, that the operations and support of the fleet of deployed IoT devices, that's the key, because the initial deployment is easy, or at least easier than keeping the fleet up to date and operational.
Yes.
That's the
And
point.
also, that's a part as well of the design. When you create a device, you create it for a certain digital service, and that digital service should think one step forward and think how it will be supported. Everything associated, and in a business to business IoT, user experience is completely different than when you're having like an Apple Watch or something like that. So it's you just have to have experience. You have to deploy many systems. You try it with a smaller, and then you iterate to big systems, but same problems stay.
Scale differs, but the same attitude at the same phases of deployment, as you said. Let me ask you one question. AI is a huge topic right now. You are in the R&D space. How do you see the role of artificial intelligence in designing new concepts and maybe even helping with development of those brand new devices or applications?
We have already been on one hype curve for IoT, so I don't want to be on the hype curve for the AI. So I want to apply it practically. And what does that mean in our case? First, there is a very interesting architectural stuff which is called edge AI. You put a little bit of processing on the device. That's also something which is not a technical stuff. It's also economy stuff. So why should you put some AI on the device? Maybe because then you use less bandwidth to send messages. So everything is like economies. In our practice, to put it that way, we use AI as algorithms, basically, not for some kind of philosophical stuff, but how much this trash can is filled, or is there trash can for paper and somebody threw a bicycle or something like that. That is how we use it, and we use it as a algorithm, like we are using a digital signal processing. That's how we see it. And above that, it's a philosophical question for us. Are using it in a practical way. Also, like for we have a huge system here locally. Telecom Serbia had a problem with access monitoring to their underground infrastructure with 18,000 entrances, manholes. There was a huge problem with damaging infrastructure. We have 18,000 sensors only in Belgrade covering. So that problem does not exist anymore. Everything is now under strict control. The point is false alarms. They're problematic. It's really hard to determine how to set devices so that they keep sensitivity for the crucial events and not to send the false alarms on a service level, not on a device communication level, on a service level. That's, for example, where AI can be applied. So you effectively reduce number of false alarms, and that's operationally very important. There are several layers. One layer is in this enabling layer to use AI, and then there is this enhancement layer where you have a system up and running, and then you want to enhance it. There is also a place for AI, from my perspective.
Bitgear started a service company, then transitioned to R&D product. What's next? What are your plans for next 5 years regarding your company and the way that you serve your customers?
What we are doing in the last 5 years, that's the state of art in IoT, is that we are waiting that IoT becomes mainstream, like in business to business IoT becomes mainstream. Now it becomes mainstream, and then we want to raise on that way for the next 5 years. Beyond 5 years, maybe I don't know, maybe I will retire. Who knows? I'm old, but in the next 5 years, I expect the huge growth of business to business IoT because there are so many short return of investment opportunities, but they simply had to put in the context and map into IoT space because simply of the nature of business and how it goes. We are still waiting that everything starts to be a bigger scale. There are not so many, really not so many good suppliers, especially end-to-end suppliers are in huge demand. That's where we see our future. We are really like end-to-end supplier. We are also IoT system integrator. We produce devices, we innovate with devices in different verticals.
You've got the capabilities and you just wait for the market to mature so you can truly leverage your capabilities
Yeah,
and provide that B2B
it
solutions.
already started. It already started along with the how we raise our capabilities. The demand is raising. A lot of people on LinkedIn they are complaining. Most activities when it comes to IoT were POC based, some kind of demos which only illustrate just a part of the picture that do not solve complete problems. So now that becomes real, and now there is a demand for a complete solution. There is no need for POC, which will end up with buying or not buying. Now people are more interesting, and big companies are more interested into doing something real with IoT. That's my feeling that it goes well.
What's the best way for people to reach out to you, to ask about potential of cooperation and to learn about what you can deliver?
LinkedIn is a good way. I'm more active on LinkedIn than on TikTok, definitely. So LinkedIn is a way to reach me.
Perfect. Thank you so much for finding time to meet with us today, sharing your story. That was really good insights on how to adapt, survive, and scale and excel in the IoT domain. I think that brings tons of value to everyone listening. Once again,
Thank,
thank
thank,
you so much.
thank you for inviting me and talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening. Go to thefingers.com to find more materials about the Internet of Things domain. My name is Łukasz Malinowski, the Internet of Things advisor and trainer.